Hi there and welcome back to the channel. My name's Joe Gardner and in this series of videos I'm going to be covering the basic operations on a mini lathe. And this is episode 5 and today we're covering drilling and tail support. Just a quick note as well for my loyal subscribers, as you all may have been aware, I've changed the channel name to Machining with Joe. I just thought this name was a lot more relevant for the type of things we're doing in the garage, and also hopefully it will help attract new subscribers to the channel and enjoy the content I'm putting out at the minute. But enough of that, let's head straight in to what we mean by drilling and tail support. To do these two operations you're going to need two bits of equipment for your lathe. One is a drill chuck and the other is a centre. So the two that I'm going with, one's a Morse taper to live centre. By live centre it means the middle spins, so I just prefer these a lot more to dead centres. And to do the actual drilling you're going to need a chuck. So again, this is a Morse taper 2 chuck and mine's a keyless chuck. I just prefer that over the chuck type on the lathe. So to start with, we're going to go over centre drilling on the lathe with actual centre drills, and after you've done that you can fit your live centre. And once we've got the live centre all sorted and you guys know what it is and what it does, we'll then move on to some drilling principles. And as always guys, if you're finding my content helpful at the minute, please subscribe, it really helps the channel grow. But let's head over to the lathe now and go through centre drilling. Now the goal today is to get a 12mm hole drilled into this right on the centre line, and this is 25mm of mild steel. So for this operation we're not going to be using the tool post at all. To start off with, we're going to use our chuck. So all you do to use a chuck on a lathe, just wind the quill out a little bit, and the quill is basically the shaft within the tail stock. And with that wound out you can just slide in your Morse taper 2 and feel it lock into place. Right, the first procedure when doing any drilling on the lathe is to always start with centre drills. So if you're not familiar with centre drills, this is what they look like. They're normally double-ended, just in case one end snaps you can still use the other end, so they're basically just doubling their life expectancy. And these are really good because they're super rigid and they've got a short cutting tip, which means you don't get a lot of wander. So for that instance these are really good. And today we're going to be using a set of dormer drill bits, and this is a 3mm. So we'll stick that in our chuck. The joys of a keyless chuck, just turn it and away we go. So I'd like to point out that I've already machined the face of this bit of stock, so I know this is perfectly flat and 90 degrees to our centre line. So when doing any drilling on the lathe, the centre of our stock when it's spinning, the relative speed is going to be a lot slower compared to the outer diameter or the outside part of the stock. So for that instance, when you're doing any drilling on a lathe, just make sure you bump the speed up a fair bit more than you would when you're cutting. Another quick key point as well, it's not so important when we're doing this operation, but if you need to do any precision drilling on a lathe, you've got two forms of measurement normally. One, you've got a scale on the quill here, which on mine is really hard to read. That's why I'm going to be fitting a DRO in a later video to this. But you've also got dials on the hand wheel, which are much more accurate. So if you're doing any form of precision drilling and you need to get an exact depth, I would probably go with the gauge on the hand wheel and just make sure you're counting it as you go. I'm going to start it up. So this is spinning at 950 RPM, and I'm just going to release my lock on my tailstock here, and I'm going to slide this forward till it's fairly close. With that nice and close there, I'm now going to lock my tailstock off so it cannot move backwards and forwards. So I'm just going to apply a bit of cutting oil to our drill bit. And now going very slowly into the work, just going to start drilling. And as we're going to use this for tail support, just to show you how tail support works, I'm going to drill all the way past the tip and then just touch off on the chamfer of the drill bit. Right, now we've got a drilled hole in the end of our stock and we know that hole is on centre line. If this was a much longer bit of stock, now is the time we'll add some tail support if we were going to do any turning down. So basically, the tip of a tail support goes in the end, and in the end there, it then lines up to our tail stock. So to use it, it's quite easy. Just again, like the drill, wind the hand wheel out a little bit, lock our live centre in, and now if we slide it down, lock the tail stock, and then wind the quill out all the way in until the live centre goes inside our stock. So with the live centre now in the hole that we've drilled, we now lock out our quill so we know we're not going to get any movement. So to do that on mine, I've just got a little handle here which I just pull round, and that is now locked. So we're locked to the bed and we're also locked to the quill. So this in theory shouldn't be able to move. Now if this is a really long bit of stock now, you could run the lathe and you can see that in theory you should have no or minimal run out. So just to go over why you'd use this, it's basically if you're working on a long bit of stock to reduce chatter and reduce deflection in the part. I just thought I'd quickly cover that in this video because you don't need a whole video on just tail support, but it is something worth mentioning. So with that being said, we're going to move away from this now and carry on drilling. As the hole I want to drill in this is quite large, I'm going to go up in stages. So I'm first of all going to start off with a pilot drill of 4mm. I'm then going to go up to an 8mm drill bit, and finally to get to the correct size I want, I'm then going to use a 12mm drill bit. So I'm going to go up in 3 stages. 1, just to reduce the workload on the drills and the lathe itself, and 2, just to minimise the risk of drill bits snapping. So just a quick pointer on drills, I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs, but the majority of drills that you'll see are going to be these 2 fluted drills. So that means when we're drilling, if you're drilling nicely, you should see chips coming out of both flutes. As you can see, the flutes in this 12mm drill are quite large, but when we look at this 4mm drill, the flutes in it are a lot more shallower and a lot more likely to get clogged up with chips. So if you're drilling deep into a piece of work, just be aware that you might have to keep retracting this every now and again and just clearing the chips out with a brush. So let's chuck this in the chuck and get drilling. It helps as well if every now and again you just add a little bit of oil to the end of your drill. So I normally retract the drill bit, wipe any chips off, and then just add a little bit of oil. So I don't know if the microphone picked up that, but as I was drilling there was a sudden change in noise. Listen really carefully and you'll be able to hear that noise again. So that noise, along with the fact that my hand wheel has now gone really hard, means we've gone all the way through the pilot drill and our drill bit is now bottoming out, which means that is where we stop. Right, so we're on our final size now. This is a 12mm drill bit going in some 25 mild steel. And I'm still at 950 RPM, but when you get to this size, you might be able to just drop the RPM down a slight bit. So in a nutshell, that's drilling on the lathe. It's very straightforward really. Once you get your head around, you're spinning the workpiece, not spinning the drill like most people have done for the whole of their lives. Right then, that's all folks. That is drilling in a nutshell. A really basic procedure, but that's why I'm doing this series of videos, because it's all about mini lathe basics. Now, if you're a first time user on the lathe and this is your first time drilling, unlike turning down a stock where it's really easy to practice with brass and aluminium, when you're drilling you want to avoid brass and aluminium when you're first starting out, just because it's such a soft metal. It will actually, if you go too deep a cut, it will pull your drill chuck out of the taper. So just be aware, mild steel when it comes to drilling is a lot easier to practice with. So in my next video we're going to be turning to a shoulder. This will put to practice you're facing off and you're turning down of stock. So it's a really good technique to learn. But for now, that's all today. Please subscribe to the channel and I'll see you in the next one.